Thank you for joining and welcome to Day of Security. Today I will be talking about avoid the burnout, do more with less. Okay. So before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Neha and I currently work at Twilio where I lead a part of their product security team that focuses on building scalable security programs and security tooling. I have over a decade of experience in information security, most of it in product security, and have worked at companies such as Twilio, Salesforce, and Workday in the past. And when I'm not working, I love traveling and spending time with my family. So, today I'll be discussing a few things. First, I'll talk about what is operational work. Second, I'll talk about the main problem that we are trying to tackle here, which is why sometimes excessive operational workload leads to burnout. Third, I'll talk about what we can do in short term and long term, so our short term and long term goals. Fourth, I'll dive into some of the side effects of all the efforts that we will put in. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. And lastly, I'll talk about some useful metrics and how we can measure success. So, let's let's get the facts straight, right? So what is operational work? Operational work is any ongoing activity and task carried out by a security team to protect and defend an organization system, network, or data from potential threats, right? And some of the examples are security monitoring, incident response, and for all my friends who are in ProdSec like me, all the security reviews that we do is operational work. And it's just because of the ongoing nature of it. No matter how many reviews you do, there's still more. It's never ending, right? And that brings us to the actual problem, which is this is what operational work looks like. Unfortunately, it feels like drinking from a fire hose. It's just ongoing and unrelenting, and there is continuous stream of tasks that need to be addressed, such as monitoring, incident response, vulnerability management, compliance activities, security reviews. It's just endless. And this creates a sense of being inundated with work and struggling to keep up. So, let's talk about some of the downsides and challenges of our of this kind of work, which is our operational work. The first, it's just ongoing and never ending. There's literally no feeling of accomplishment because before you're done with one thing, there's another thing waiting for you. And sometimes this is just not as interesting to some folks, especially for people who are higher up in the career ladder. It's just not challenging enough. And thus, it doesn't help with career growth due to its limited visibility and recognition. And there are a few factors that makes it even worse. Security teams may face a heavy workload, especially during periods of high security alerts or incidents or around the time of security or feature releases. And limited resources, including staffing or budgets or tools, can add up to this pressure and create a sense of being overwhelmed. And let's be honest to ourselves, the current macroeconomics is not helping at all. There's no new headcount almost anywhere. The budgets are tighter than ever before, and security tooling is still very expensive. And I'm sure you all will agree, all this is very stressful. So, but then let's ask ourselves this question, why do we end up doing this to ourselves? We know it's bad, but we continue doing this to ourselves. So, there are a few reasons that I can think of. First is the operational work is most definitely important for the business, and there's no doubt about it. The business needs all this effort from our side to keep going, and we acknowledge that. And as a security team, it takes forever to build relationships with our engineering teams or stakeholders, and we do not want to burn those bridges that took forever to build. So we continue servicing our stakeholders in this case. And on top of all that, our leadership tracks our SLAs, and rightly so. We have a level of service agreements with our for our customers, which is like maybe the engineering teams or IT team, and we have to provide them the service that they're looking for. And that's why after all this, we keep pushing ourselves to do even better, to be enablers and not blockers. And that's the reason this is the result. We find ourselves in this endless vicious circle of constant operational or KTLO tasks, and it's almost impossible to get out of it. And as a result, we find ourselves or someone on our team facing burnout or mental health issues. And as a manager, keeping my engineers healthy and avoiding any sort of burnout is my biggest priority. So, before we dive into the solution and before we talk about how to fix this problem, let's look at the positive side. Operational work comes in various shapes or forms and has varied challenges. It can help you with learning new threats in your fields and has a potential to help you with your career growth, especially if you're early on in your career. You get a chance to work with other members of your team and mostly senior members who coach you who guide you when you're early on in your career. And this, from a personal experience, is the best opportunity to learn from some of the veterans in the industry. So, based on your attendance, I'm assuming that in the past you have dealt with excessive operational workload or are currently dealing with it. But if you're unsure or if you're on the edge, I have three questions for you. This will help you judge whether your team or your organization is dealing with this issue that we are talking about here or not. First is, can you maintain your SLAs with your current resources and bandwidth? Second, do you think you can scale with your company's growth? And third, which is very relevant in today's day and age, is do you think you can scale with your company's growth without additional headcount? And answering all these questions will help you judge whether you need to change something about it or not. So we all know that our business or our team is facing this issue and we all need to fix this, but it's definitely easier said than done. There are so many obstacles that we face when we try to fix this, right? And the main reason is we do not have time or resources since we are just so inundated with the current workload, which is important for the business. So it's kind of a vicious cycle that it's hard to get out of. And I feel you. I have been there. I have been in similar situations where I thought it was impossible to get out of it, and there is no way you can do anything about it. But the reality is that your company is going to grow, your workload will increase, and because of the macroeconomics, your headcount will not increase proportionally. So your team might be not be at the breaking point right now, but all these factors are going to make things worse in the future. And that's why, for your sake and for the sake of your team, if you're a manager, or for your peers, you have to get out of this. We have to do something about it. And with that, let's dive into the solution. Okay. So this is definitely gonna be a very, very, very long journey, trust me. So planning it properly is important. The first thing I would suggest everyone to do is look at the big picture. Try to understand your organization, your business's priority, the threat landscape, where your team fits into the organization and within the security team. This will help you build your team's charter and its priorities. And then, based on your team's bandwidth and resources, decide what you can do realistically. Um, and if this means that your team needs to shift focus and let go of a few things that you do today, it's very important to get leadership buy in. Your leaders are the ones who are going to support you and protect you when you get pushed back from other parts of the business. And that's why it is essential to have them on board with you in this journey. And throughout this section, I will talk about some examples that I have encountered in my past at the companies that I've worked with. So, one of the most toughest part of this journey could be prioritization, honestly. And my motto here is if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. So we all better prioritize, right? And the first part is identify your most critical assets, and then based on a risk-based approach, prioritize the riskier assets over those that don't pose a huge risk to your organization. Second, align with your organization's goal. So this is a unique one. And one example is that at one of my companies that I worked with, the business had quite a few products in their portfolios and we were supporting all of them. But the business decided to prioritize a few products that brought in the maximum revenue. So our product security team decided to dedicate a few engineers just to support those products because that was the vision for the business and we had to align with our business as well. And lastly, you need to stay updated with the emerging threats and continuously improve. For example, in my previous life, my company saw a huge influx of nation state threat actors doing DOS attacks on us. So our SOC team dedicated a few resources just to that, and we were prioritizing it over the other tasks that we had. And as I said before, reducing your operational workload is going to be a very, very long journey. It almost certainly will feel like you are taking baby steps, and that's totally fine. So, my advice is do not try to boil the ocean. First thing to keep in mind is like continue focusing on the items that pose the highest risk to your organization. And then, second is try to automate the lower risk items. Fewer, like few things that I've seen work in the past are having a questionnaire based auto approval system. If the review request that you get is low to no risk to your organization, then your automation shouldn't even let it come to you. Another one is having security guidelines for lower risk items. At my previous company, we had security guidelines for most of the technologies that our business used. So for lower risk items, we shared those with the requesting team and they had to verify and acknowledge that they are adhering to the best practice. And once they did that, we approved the case. So and all this will reduce your average turnaround time significantly, and this is a quick win. Doing this at my previous company, we found out that our product security team was reviewing all the requests that came in manually, but only 20 to 25% of the requests were high risk. Using these techniques that I just spoke about, we were able to spend more time on the high risk requests or more manual efforts on it because we were able to automate the remaining 80 to 85, like 75 to 80% of our requests that were not adding too much value to the organization. And I do want to give a word of caution for everybody. The aim of this exercise is not to um, reduce your workload without any background. The aim of this exercise is to automate the mundane tasks that do not add too much value. And we do not recommend anybody, or we shouldn't be, as a part of this exercise, changing our risk appetite. So that's one thing that we all should be keeping in mind, in the back of our mind while doing this. So we already spoke about some of the quick wins and what we can do in short term. Let's talk about long term solutions. So all our security programs need to be sustainable. For example, all the teams within security should focus their energy on maybe automations or writing security guidelines or trying to find criterias for auto approvals where manual intervention is not needed. A few things that the product security teams can do is programs like security champions or security partnership programs, or training all your employees and developers on security best practices. One example that would really help me make my case stronger here is, for example, if your SOC team is seeing an increase in workload because a lot of your employees are falling for phishing scams, their workload is rising, then you don't need more SOC engineers. You need more employees to train all the employees and to just teach them how to protect themselves against these scams. This is how you will sustainably manage this risk. And one major indirect benefit of doing all that is that your security engineers want to work on these projects and not just the operational work. These are the types of projects that they find interesting, and this is what keeps them going. um, they will be happier, and this will also keep, it was also help with their career growth, so it's a win-win for everybody. So based on all the information so far, you might be wondering, like, I don't have time for it. And I think that's a very fair question to ask. And to answer this question, I'll go back to what I said before: baby steps. Assess how much time you have, assess how much time you spend on your operational work, and just reduce that by a few hours a week, maybe. And then use that time to focus on strategic projects or sustainable security programs. And with time, you will be able to evaluate how much progress you're making, and if it's working, if what you're doing is working, everybody's happy, um, it, you have less burnt out security engineers, and your customers are happy, you'll know that you can probably start increasing those hours, and then that's how you can shift towards minimizing the amount of time that you're spending on operational work and increasing the amount of time you spend on this strategic projects. But definitely, most definitely, you'll have to take baby steps and start small. So I there are some side effects to this, and it's better to just know these before we start, so that we're just prepared for all this. And I do want to point out a few things. A good thing is that you will be able to reduce risk, organizational risk, meaningfully while keeping your engineers happy. However, there's a downside to it, and that's if you start spending time on things like auto approvals, or shifting your focus to only a few products, or if you reduce the time you spend on operational work, you might miss a few SLAs in the beginning, and you might piss off a few customers or engineers in the short term, and this might lead to burnt bridges. And all of us in the field of security will agree that building these bridges took forever. So most definitely, we don't want to do that. And it's a non-negotiable. We just don't want to do that. And so there are a few steps that you can do to mitigate all these negative side effects. First is, I spoke about this already, leadership buy-in. As I said before, they are the ones who will support you and protect you when you get pushback from other parts of the business. So the first thing to do here is getting leadership buy-in, so that you have their support throughout the journey. The second one, and the most important one, is proper communication. Before you start this journey, you must communicate to your customers and stakeholders the changes you're about to make, and explain them the why part. Explain to them that in short term, they might see a deterioration in the services that you provide to them. But in long term, it's going to be better than ever before. And personally, from personal experience, I have seen this work in the past. Our stakeholders were very excited about the changes that we were about to bring in. They did see our services deteriorate for a short period of time, but overall, in the long term, we were able to improve our services, and everybody was happy. But as long as you give them a good notice that this is going to happen, and come to a middle ground and prepare them for this, they would be on board, I guess. So, implementing all these solutions we talk about is a major shift for any security team, and I do agree with that. And that's why it is very important to find ways to measure success, to make sure we are making steady progress, and to check if we need any course correction at any point of time. And to be able to figure out what's working and what's not working, we need ways to measure our success. And also, if your leadership, your customers, your stakeholders are on board, you will need to show them progress. There's no doubt about it. They're supporting you, and they're being patient throughout this journey. So we do need to show them that we are taking the steps in the right direction, and we need metrics to be able to prove that. So here are a few ways how you can measure success, and I've used these in the past as well. First is overall turnaround time. Keeping a track to see if it's increasing, decreasing. As I said, it might go up a little bit in the short term, but eventually you need to see it going downwards to be able to convince yourselves and others that what you're doing is working. Second, keep an eye on how many manual versus automated reviews you did. Third is vulnerability data. Before you shift focus, get a sense of what your baseline looks like. How many vulnerabilities are you filing every month or every quarter? For product security folks, your bug bounty programs can give you these stats very easily. And just keep an eye on any major deviations from this baseline. If it's going up or down, that will give you an idea of why, um, what's going on with this journey. Fourth is, pretty sure a company has a way to judge an employee's wellness score. It's usually a survey to see how happy they are and how well they're doing. Use that to see if your employees are happier or not, to judge if what you're doing is working out. And if you don't have a survey that your company has, just DIY it. It's not hard. Just create a survey with SurveyMonkey, just a Google form, send it out to your team before you start the journey and keep a track of it. Do it on a regular basis. It's not that hard. It's quite easy to do, and it's totally worth the effort. And an informal way of tracking progress is using your one on ones or your team meetings to get a sense of how the team is feeling. Now, you can't use this information to go to your leaders to show, like, my team is very happy in my team meeting. You can't do that, but it gives you a sense of it gives you some sort of reassurance that what you are doing is working. And lastly, attrition rate, is it dropping? There are a lot of factors that decide the attrition rate, so I'll take it with a grain of salt, but it would be fairly easy for you to see the factors that are leading to attrition, or if it's reducing or if it's not reducing, why it's not reducing. So take it with a grain of salt, but it might give you an indication of if it's working or not. So I definitely see these efforts as multi-year initiatives for sure. And what do you think the results would be? It would be less operational work, better security posture, better mental health, better career growth, and less attrition. And that's what we all want, right? So here are some action items for all of you to take back with you. First is, let's assess your current situation. First, assess your team's current bandwidth and compare it to your operational workload. And also consider what future might look like for your team and for your company. Second, pull in the metrics, the current metrics, before you start making any changes. And third is, talk to your team or peers to get a pulse on their mental health. These three things will help you figure out if your team is dealing with burnout from excessive workload or not. And if you are facing the problems, then there are three action items that you can take. These are long term. First is prioritize your work. I can't talk enough about this. Prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. In short term, automate or get rid of mundane low risk tasks. This will make up some time that you can spend on either the high risk items that your team is supposed to look at, or it will free up time for you to focus on the sustainable security programs. Third is, in long term, you need to shift your focus towards sustainable security programs, and the short term changes will help you make time for that. And that's all I had for you all today. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will share the link of my LinkedIn profile here. Thank you.